The new boss brought all employees to dismissal and hired her own in their place. I got kicked out of the army. No warning, just bam, done. One day, I had a purpose. The next I was staring at a blank future. I had no idea what to do next. The civilian world felt like a whole different planet, and I had zero clue how to fit in. No experience that mattered, nothing to fall back on. I had to figure it out. Emily and her 2 kids were counting on me now. I couldn't afford to sit around. I had to get something, anything, to make sure the bills were paid, the kids were fed. The military had given me structure, a purpose. Now, that was gone, and I had to figure out how to navigate civilian life. The only thing I had was my experience. That was it. I took whatever I could find, anything to stay afloat. Some jobs paid well, some didn't. But none of them were what I was looking for. There was no sense of fulfillment. Just a lot of time spent looking for something more, but it didn't show up. Then I got a break. A security guard job at a construction site for a big oil company. I didn't know much about construction or the oil industry, but they liked my military background. That was enough for them. They needed someone reliable, someone who knew how to follow rules and stay alert. That was me. I figured I could do this. The first day was rough. Trucks, workers, vehicles all coming in and out. It was overwhelming at first. I wasn't used to standing around all day, checking people and vehicles. But the job wasn't hard to understand once I got the hang of it. The company was building a new headquarters, and it was up to us to make sure everything stayed secure. It felt like a real job, and for the first time in a while, I felt like I was good at something again. It wasn't easy, though. The work was tiring. There were thousands of vehicles coming through every day. I was on my feet all day, checking everything, making sure there weren't any issues. But as the days went on, I realized I could handle it. I knew what I had to do, and I did it well. I had to be quick and accurate. Mistakes weren't an option. There was a sense of camaraderie on the team. Most of the security guys were former military, just like me. We didn't have to explain things to each other. We understood. We joked around, sometimes about the silly stuff we missed from our time in service. But when it came down to it, we all knew the job had to get done. We had each other's backs. Things started to shift after a few months. A position opened up, night supervisor. It wasn't the highest position, but it was a step up. I wasn't sure if I should apply. I'd only been there a few months, and there were others who had been working there longer. But the senior supervisor, a guy named Ray, told me I should go for it. He thought I had the right stuff. He'd seen my work, and he thought I could handle the responsibility. So, I put in my application. I didn't think I'd get it. But then, a few days later, I found out they offered me the job. I hadn't expected it, honestly. It felt good. But it also felt strange. I'd worked hard for it, but I still couldn't shake the feeling that I didn't deserve it as much as the others who'd been there longer. That's when I got the call from her. She was the other candidate, one of the few women on the site. She'd been there longer than me, and she thought she should have gotten the position. Her voice was cold when she called me. She said I only got the job because I was a guy, and that I didn't deserve it. She kept going on about how she'd been working her ass off, and how it wasn't fair. I didn't know what to say. I was caught off guard, but I didn't back down. I hadn't gotten the job because I was a guy. I got it because I was the one who earned it. But she wasn't interested in hearing that. She kept going on about sexism, about how the company had only given it to me because I was male. I didn't have much to say in response. I just listened. I wasn't sure what to expect after that. The tension was palpable. It wasn't just about the promotion anymore. It was about everything else. The company had its issues. And it wasn't just with her. Tasha, the new boss who had replaced the old one, was about to make everything worse. She was inexperienced and made decisions that didn't make sense, creating an environment that was toxic. She didn't know how to manage people. She didn't even try to understand the job. I thought things would get better when I took the role. But they didn't. The promotion should have been a victory, but instead, it felt like a constant battle to keep everything from falling apart. And that's how it started. The tension built. The mistakes piled up. And before I knew it, the whole team was on edge. It wasn't just the usual work problems anymore. It was something deeper. Something that was about to change everything. Things only got worse after I took the supervisor position. Tasha, the new boss, didn't help. If anything, she made everything 10 times harder. She wasn't just inexperienced. She was clueless about the job, about the people working there, and how to actually manage a team. She micromanaged everything, and nothing ever seemed to get done the right way. It felt like I was the only one who actually cared about keeping things running smoothly, but no matter how hard I worked, it never felt like enough. The others on the team, especially the older guys, started noticing it too. The frustration was building. The constant back and forth with Tasha felt like we were all just wasting time. There was no real communication. It felt like a mess I was supposed to fix, but I wasn't given the tools or support to do it. And then, there was her, the woman who had called me after I got the promotion. She didn't let it go. I could see it in her eyes whenever she walked past me. She didn't talk to me directly anymore, but I could feel her resentment every time we crossed paths. And honestly, I didn't care. I'd earned that role, but her hostility? That was something else. I had enough on my plate without having to deal with her passive-aggressive attitude. It was clear Tasha wasn't doing much to improve the situation. She gave orders, but they made no sense. The new rules kept changing, and no one knew what they were supposed to be doing. I talked to her about it, trying to get some clarity on how we could fix the mess, but it felt like talking to a wall. She didn't care. Or maybe she just didn't know what she was doing. I don't know which one was worse. The worst part, though, was how she handled the staff. She pushed people, made them feel small. It wasn't just about the work anymore. It was about power. She didn't listen to anyone. She thought that making rules was enough. But people didn't just need rules, they needed leadership. And Tasha wasn't giving us that. She was too busy trying to prove she was in control, instead of earning respect. I was doing everything I could to make sure things didn't fall apart. I had to step up more and more just to keep the team together. I was working long hours, trying to cover for Tasha's mistakes, and slowly, I could feel the toll it was taking on me. I wasn't just trying to manage the job anymore. I was trying to manage people's frustrations, their growing resentment. It was like a ticking time bomb. One of the guys on the team, Ray, started pulling away. Ray had been one of the most reliable guys on the site. He'd worked there longer than most of us, and had the experience to back it up. But I noticed he was starting to withdraw. He wasn't as engaged as he used to be. I talked to him a few times, but he didn't open up. It was clear something was wrong, but I wasn't sure what. A couple of weeks later, Ray came to me with news. He was leaving. I could hardly believe it. Ray had been a mentor to me when I first got there. I'd looked up to him. He knew how to get things done, and now he was walking away. He said it wasn't just Tasha. She was part of it, but it was everything. The company, the way things had been handled, the constant tension. He couldn't take it anymore. It wasn't just Ray, though. More and more people started to leave. The environment had become toxic, and no one wanted to stay. I couldn't blame them. I didn't want to leave. I felt like I had no choice. But I wasn't sure how much longer I could hold it together either. The real problem came when Tasha started making things even worse. She started pushing rules that didn't make sense, things that made the job harder instead of easier. I had tried to explain the problems, but nothing worked. I felt like I was stuck in a cycle. Tasha was in over her head, and no one seemed to care. The resentment from the team grew, and the atmosphere became unbearable. Then came the breaking point. One day, a worker came in late, just a few minutes past his shift. Tasha decided this was a perfect moment to make an example of him. She called him out in front of everyone, made him feel small. She didn't even give him a chance to explain. That was when everything flipped. The workers had had enough. They weren't just annoyed anymore, they were angry. Tasha had crossed a line. She wasn't just an incompetent boss, she was a bully. She was doing everything wrong, and no one was standing up to her. That night, I was doing my rounds when I overheard a conversation between a couple of the guys. They were talking about quitting. I could tell they were serious. The frustration was building to a point where it felt like the only way out was to walk away. And I knew deep down, I was reaching that point too. I wasn't sure what was going to happen next. I didn't want to quit. I didn't want to give up, especially when I'd worked so hard to get to this point. But I could feel the weight of everything starting to drag me down. I was beginning to wonder if I'd made a mistake. If this job, this role, was even worth it anymore. Everything unraveled faster than I thought it would. It wasn't just the staff leaving anymore. It wasn't even just about Tasha anymore, although she was still a huge part of the mess. No, it was bigger than that. The whole project started falling apart. There was no leadership, no stability, just chaos. It didn't take long before people began to openly talk about quitting. They were tired of Tasha's incompetence, tired of the constant micromanagement, and tired of the way she treated people. The environment had shifted from one of camaraderie and respect to one of frustration and fear. No one felt like they could do their jobs without being second-guessed, without feeling like they were under the microscope all the time. And yet, I kept pushing through. I didn't want to quit, didn't want to admit that the job I had fought for was slipping through my fingers. But every day felt like a new battle. Even when things were going smoothly, Tasha would find a way to make it difficult. It didn't matter what we did. If she didn't like it, it was wrong. And if she didn't know how to fix it, she would blame someone else. I started to realize that I was no different than everyone else who was walking out. I was stuck in this toxic cycle, and it was wearing me down. But I kept telling myself it would get better. I had to hold on. I couldn't just walk away, not when I had this much invested. Not when I'd come this far. The breaking point came when the project began to fail. We were behind schedule, behind budget, and there were issues everywhere. The company was starting to lose contracts. Contractors were pulling out, and the oil company overseeing the whole project wasn't happy. I'd seen enough bad leadership to know that this wasn't just Tasha's fault. But her incompetence made it worse. The mistakes we were making, the delays, everything was adding up, and the pressure from above was relentless. One night, after a particularly brutal shift, I was sitting alone in the break room, trying to decompress. That's when Ray came in. He'd been gone for a while now, but every now and then, we'd run into each other. Ray had been there longer than I had, and he was the one who had taught me how to survive in the beginning. He was the one who showed me the ropes and made it clear that I wasn't just doing a job, I was part of something. But when he left, it was like the air had been sucked out of the place. We didn't talk much, but when he came over and sat down beside me, I knew this wasn't just a casual visit. "They're gonna fire her," he said. I didn't have to ask who he meant. I already knew. "I think it's too late for that," I told him. "This whole place is falling apart." Ray nodded. "It's not just her. They're all complicit. They're all guilty of letting it get this bad. The company, the higher-ups, they knew what was happening and did nothing." I sat there for a while, just thinking. The truth of it hit me hard. The realization that this wasn't just Tasha's fault, it was everyone's. She was just the face of the problem. The company had let it get this bad, and no one seemed to care. They were too busy covering their own asses to notice what was really happening on the ground. I didn't want to accept it. I didn't want to believe that I had wasted so much time trying to make something work that wasn't even worth saving. But it was clear now. I had been fighting the wrong battle. The next day, Tasha called me into her office. She wanted to talk about some new rules she was implementing, which was just a way to control everyone even more. I walked in, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to pretend everything was fine. I wasn't going to sit there and nod like I used to. I wasn't going to keep pretending I could fix it. She started on her usual rant about discipline, about how things needed to change. I sat there, listening, but I wasn't really hearing her anymore. I could feel the anger rising in my chest, the frustration I'd been holding in for months. Finally, I cut her off. "This place is falling apart, Tasha," I said. "And it's not because of me. It's because no one's doing their job. No one's taking responsibility." Her face twisted, a mix of confusion and defensiveness. "You think you can do better?" I didn't even hesitate. "Yes. I think I could do a hell of a lot better than you." There was a long silence. She glared at me, and I knew she was trying to figure out how to regain control of the situation. But the truth was, she had lost it. She had lost everything. This place had become her mess, and I wasn't going to clean it up for her anymore. I stood up and walked out of her office, not looking back. It was over. I wasn't going to keep fighting for something that was beyond saving. That night, I sent in my resignation. It was hard. I had put so much into this job, but I knew it was the right choice. I couldn't keep pouring myself into something that was never going to work. I didn't want to be just another guy who was stuck, waiting for something to change. I wanted to be someone who took control of his life again. I walked away from the construction site, and the mess it had become. It felt like I was shedding a weight I didn't even realize I was carrying. A few weeks later, I heard that Tasha had been fired. The company had finally seen what everyone else had already known. But by then, it didn't matter. It was too late for any of us. As for me, I found a new job, a new team. And slowly, I started rebuilding. It wasn't easy. It wasn't a quick fix. But it was mine. It was something I could control.